Zimbabwe's story is one of resilience, creativity, and transformation. A land where ancient stone cities whisper of a grand past, and modern struggles tell of an enduring spirit. Located in the heart of southern Africa, Zimbabwe's history spans thousands of years, from prehistoric hunter-gatherer societies to one of the most influential medieval African kingdoms, through colonization, liberation struggles, and into the complexities of independence. Ancient roots in the rise of Great Zimbabwe. Long before European maps named it, this land was home to Stone Age hunter-gatherers whose rock paintings still decorate the Matobo Hills. By around 300 AD, Bantu-speaking peoples began migrating into the region, bringing with them iron-working technology, farming skills, and cattle herding. Over centuries, their communities evolved into chiefdoms and trading networks. Between the 11th and 15th centuries, the Kingdom of Great Zimbabwe emerged as a powerful civilization. Its capital, now a UNESCO World Heritage Site, was built from massive, mortarless granite walls that still inspire awe today. Great Zimbabwe thrived on gold mining, agriculture, and trade, connecting to coastal Swahili merchants and beyond to Arabia, India, and China. The kingdom's wealth and political influence were unmatched in the region, but by the 15th century, shifts in trade routes and political rivalries led to its decline. Successor states and regional shifts. As Great Zimbabwe waned, successor states rose, notably the Monomotapa Empire, which dominated trade in gold and ivory and maintained relations with Portuguese traders along the Indian Ocean coast. However, Portuguese interference in local politics weakened the empire by the 17th century, leading to fragmentation. By the 19th century, the Rosvi Empire had become a significant power, defending its lands fiercely, but eventually succumbing to internal strife and external pressures, including the arrival of Nguni-speaking groups during the Mfecane upheavals. Colonial intrusion and the birth of Rhodesia. The late 19th century brought a new force: European colonialism. British imperialist Cecil Rhodes, driven by visions of a continent-spanning empire and mineral wealth, secured mining rights from local leaders under questionable agreements. In 1890, his British South Africa company BSAC occupied the territory, naming it Southern Rhodesia after him. The colonization process dispossessed African communities of their most fertile lands, imposing taxes and forced labor systems to support white settler farms and mines. Africans resisted, most notably in the First Chimurenga, 1896 to 1897, a coordinated uprising by the Shona and Ndebele peoples. Though ultimately suppressed, this rebellion became a lasting symbol of the fight for self-determination. Settler rule and segregation. In the early 20th century, Southern Rhodesia became a self-governing British colony dominated by a white minority. Laws enforced racial segregation, restricted African political participation, and concentrated wealth and land in settler hands. Agriculture, mining, and tobacco production flourished for settlers, but for the African majority, poverty deepened. Political movements began forming, laying the groundwork for future liberation efforts. The liberation struggle. By the mid-20th century, nationalist movements demanded independence and an end to racial inequality. Leaders such as Joshua Nkomo of the Zimbabwe African People's Union, ZAPU, and Robert Mugabe of the Zimbabwe African National Union, ZANU, emerged. White settler leader Ian Smith's government, determined to maintain minority rule, issued the Unilateral Declaration of Independence, UDI, in 1965, cutting formal ties with Britain. The world condemned Rhodesia, imposing sanctions, but Smith's government held on through repression. Meanwhile, African nationalist groups turned to armed struggle, beginning the Second Chimurenga, 1964 to 1979. Guerrilla warfare, economic strain, and growing international pressure eventually forced negotiations. Independence and the birth of Zimbabwe. In 1980, the Lancaster House Agreement ended the war, and Zimbabwe was born as a sovereign nation. Robert Mugabe became prime minister, pledging reconciliation and development. The early years were marked by improvements in education, healthcare, and infrastructure. Zimbabwe became known as one of Africa's most promising young nations. However, tensions soon emerged. In the 1980s, political rivalry between ZANU and ZAPU led to the Gukurahundi massacres in Matabeleland, where thousands of civilians were killed. Though officially framed as a campaign against dissidents, the violence left deep scars. Economic rise and decline. Through the 1980s and early 1990s, Zimbabwe's economy remained relatively strong, driven by commercial agriculture and mining. Yet structural economic weaknesses, reliance on exports, debt burdens, and political patronage, set the stage for future crises. In 2000, the government launched a controversial land reform program to redistribute white-owned farms to Black Zimbabweans. While aiming to correct colonial injustices, the process was chaotic and often violent, disrupting agricultural production. Combined with corruption, political instability, and international sanctions, the economy spiraled into hyperinflation by the late 2000s. At its peak, Zimbabwe's inflation rate was so extreme that banknotes of trillions of Zimbabwean dollars were issued, only to be worthless within days. Political turbulence in transition. For decades, Robert Mugabe's rule was marked by both steadfast defiance of Western criticism and increasing authoritarianism. Elections were often marred by allegations of fraud and violence. Opposition parties, such as the Movement for Democratic Change, MDC, led by Morgan Tsvangirai, challenged ZANU-PF's dominance but faced heavy repression. In 2017, after a military intervention and political pressure within his own party, Mugabe resigned. Emerson Mnangagwa, his former ally, became president, promising economic revival and democratic reforms. While some restrictions eased, political tensions and economic challenges continued. Zimbabwe today. Modern Zimbabwe is a nation of contrasts, rich in resources like gold, platinum, and fertile land, yet struggling with unemployment, currency instability, and political divisions. Its people, however, remain remarkably resilient, adapting through innovation, informal trade, and a strong sense of community. Culturally, Zimbabwe retains deep connections to its heritage. Traditional music, the mbira, thumb piano, stone sculpture, and vibrant ceremonies coexist with modern art, literature, and sports. Landmarks like Victoria Falls, Hwanga National Park, and the ruins of Great Zimbabwe attract travelers from around the world, offering glimpses of both natural and historical grandeur. A nation shaped by struggle and hope. The history of Zimbabwe is not a simple rise and fall, but a story of continual transformation. From the grandeur of Great Zimbabwe's stone walls to the dusty battlefields of the Liberation War, from economic highs to crushing lows, each chapter has shaped its identity. Zimbabwe's journey reflects the broader African experience, the weight of colonial legacies, the fierce fight for self-rule, and the ongoing quest for stability and dignity. Its history is both a cautionary tale and a source of inspiration, reminding us that a nation's spirit cannot be measured only in its hardships, but in its ability to endure and dream again.